Good morning and welcome to the fifth episode of Franchise Direct's Franchise Discovery webinar series. My name is Keith Cannon and I'm a digital marketer for Franchise Direct. Today with us we have David France, the founder of Portfolio Millionaire. And as always, we have Jerry Foley leading us today. So this is live and it'll be recorded and we'll send it out to everyone in this afternoon. So I'll hand it over to you, Jerry.
Thanks very much, Keith. And firstly, and a word of apology to everybody who's been waiting about 90 seconds. It was all down to my fault. We're using a new system called Livestorm, which Keith has set up, but I didn't follow all of the instructions directly, which is why I asked the questions rather than deal with all of the background stuff. Lovely to see David, who's got a nice big back garden there, which is appropriate for a man talking about property. So, David, tell us a little bit about the model and how it works at Portfolio Millionaire.
Okay. Well, as you know, I could probably talk all day about this. I know we had a bit of a chat yesterday, so I'll try and keep it short. In essence, we help people invest in property, mainly here in the UK. We do international property deals from time to time, but mainly in the UK, focused on helping people build a portfolio that provides income every single month through rental income and also other ways to make money in property, which is a bit unconventional, some of the methods we use. In a nutshell, it's just helping people invest in property.
Now, property is obviously a huge area. So are there particular aspects of the property market that you try to get your partners and investors interested in? And secondly, I suppose, let's start at a very basic requirement. How much does it take up front to actually get involved with your partnership scheme?
Okay, so the cost to join us is £10,000 plus the VAT. We do have an ongoing cost. Rather than charge the full fee, we've tried to make it a bit more affordable. So we charge £166 plus VAT per month as well. So we do try and keep it affordable for people. And some people, we call everybody partners that come on because you do get a chance to partner with us on your deals. So if people come on board with us, it is very much bespoke because some people may come on board and they've just literally got the cost to join us, in which case we take them down a certain path to be able to generate income from doing property deals without having to buy them and collecting commissions through structuring the deals. And then when that accumulates, we encourage them to invest in property as soon as possible, because that's where the true wealth is really generated, through holding the properties over long term, because you get the compounded growth every single year of your assets, and then you get paid every single month. You know, you do the work the once and you get paid every month from acquiring these properties.
And in terms of getting in and getting the system that you use, how does that work in terms of the backup and support? So say I just have the 10,000, I want to get involved somehow in the property market.
Yeah.
It's a booming market at present, so I can't go out onto the open market and get a stake in it. One of your attractions is, you say, a lot of your partners come from a variety of backgrounds. Correct.
We work with some of the partners are cleaners, and some of them got fighter pilots, and we've had a football player on with us as well. These are some of the clients we help put a bit of a plan together now, and that depends on what capital or resources or time they've perhaps got available. They're the two main variables, resources and the time available, and we can usually put a plan together then.
And in terms of the training that you provide, because you have a very particular model that the new partners are always coached in, so that they know how you go about getting directly involved and spotting property opportunities.
Yeah, so we put people through an 8-week training really quickly to try and get them into what we call deal flow, because the last thing you want to do is invest in something and not know when you're going to get a return. If you invest the time that we tell you to invest, I mean, you need a minimum of 10 hours a week for this business, and that can be split over a week. You know, some of the partners do it all at a weekend, some do a little bit on an evening when the kids are in bed. And it is a flexible approach, but it does require some effort, some work. And if you're prepared to do that, it can reward you quite well, this business. And this is why I like property. It's very safe and secure. And as you mentioned before, Jerry, as well, we are in a hot property climate. And when you're in this kind of market we're in, you've got to really know what you're doing, because otherwise you're just going to compete with everyone else. Because some people would think, well, you're teaching us to invest in property. What's the USP here? Anyone can go out and buy a property and rent it out. I would agree with that. The biggest problem you've got is you're going to run out of capital really quickly, because the typical buy-to-let lender will require 25% deposit, and you're going to run out of cash really quick. And then furthermore, if you buy with cash, a whole property with cash, you're not getting a big return, and you could actually spread that cash along multiple properties, which are all going to gain in value year in year and provide you and your family with cash flow. But if you buy the wrong properties as well, I think I mentioned to you yesterday, Jerry, if people buy flats, for example, we're not a big fan of flats because you've got service charges, and typically you've got higher turnover of tenants, so a lot more transient people that move into flats. They're typically staying 1 or 2 years and then they're going. And every time a property becomes vacant, it becomes a liability. You've got mortgages to pay, you've got service charges to pay. So if we focus on houses, typically 2-bed properties and up, I've actually got at least one example here today, because I wanted to share an example at some point today of a partner and a recent deal and the rough headline.
That's good. We'll come to that. But just in terms of the flats, because people traditionally in the buy-to-let market thought of flats as an opportunity to get into the market. But just detail some of those real concerns where it mightn't be such a smart idea.
Well, one of them was definitely the service charges, turnover of tenants, because you want peace of mind to know that, if you get a house that's 2-bed plus, I know some of our 3-bed semis, we've had tenants staying there. We call them lifers. They're in for life. They're usually in there, from the point of purchasing them to the point of holding them for a significant amount of time. And you very rarely get void periods, which means you've got this solid, predictable income. We also one thing I also need to point out is we work with some social housing providers as well, and we can literally give the property to them and they'll take them on a 10-year lease, for example, and we give all our partners these connections and contacts we've built up over the years. So this is really the main benefits to joining us. You get access to all the pain I've been through over the years to get to where I am now, in terms of the contacts, the connections, the finance institutions we work with, getting preferential rates over borrowing for your properties.
And is there a problem though when people come to you and say, look, I'm interested in this, but we've all read in the papers for the last few years that the property market has been, very buoyant. Have I missed a boat? Are all the best opportunities gone? Or can you persuade me otherwise? No, this is still a very good time.
Well, that's a really good question. The media is probably, they're obviously trying to sell papers. So I would try and avoid what the masses are saying and just look at really what's going on. If you look at history, it's a good perhaps indicator of what might happen in the future. That property's not going out of fashion anytime soon. Everyone's going to need somewhere to live. So no matter what the market's doing, there's always opportunities. But you do have to be careful that you're not overpaying for properties, and that's what people are doing right now in the markets.
But how do you? I know you said you've got your detailed profiles, you've got your very good contacts, including working with housing associations.
Yeah. So
you've got an in then, which the normal punter wouldn't have without your professional advice and expertise.
Yeah, and also it's access to deals. Some of the partners, if they're not in a position to take a deal, they'll sell a deal to another partner, and these are all off-market deals. You can't go on Rightmove and find a lot of the deals that we put together, because they're all strictly off-market, negotiated on really good prices or terms, and we're able to sort of deal with those properties behind closed doors and generate a really good portfolio off the back of that.
What about the example then that you had to hand? You said this is a good example, a recent one that might show us how it works.
So one of our partners came on board with us, and he had about 25k sitting in his bank, and he said, look, I want to deploy that right away in a property, because the real danger you've got at the moment with cash in the bank is it's getting eroded at with the inflation, because it's going up and up and up. And obviously banks aren't paying you anything. So you really need to get out of the bank into something safe and, predictable. And I see that as, obviously I'm a bit biased towards property, obviously, but I know it's stood the test of time. So this particular property deal, this was in just outside Middlesbrough on the northeast. And the partner puts in £22,000 of his capital. He's got 25k, so he's got 3k left as a bit of a slush fund, as a bit of a contingency if the boiler breaks or something like that. And then in 6 months' time, because of the way he's buying it, we're showing him how to extract 15,000 of that initial 22,000. So he's leaving in the property £7,000 in essence. Whereas most people out there would put in the full 22,000 because that's like your deposit, some of your fees, your stamp duty, etc. Most people go out and buy property, and that's how they buy property, and they're sacrificing cash for cash flow. But when they join us, we show you some of these concepts, how to buy your property at the right price and extract your capital. And in that example, you're extracting over, about 3/4 of your capital back out, which then you can go on to buy your next deal. And this
is that fairly, I mean, there are a lot of figures here, but basically the premise is we free up your capital more quickly than if you go down the traditional route.
Yes.
And then you can use that new sum of capital, which has been freed, to look at another investment. That's pretty smart. But is that a realistic time frame? 6 months, you'll be able to get some capital out and move on to another one?
You could actually do it sooner, Jerry. You can actually do it because there's something called the 6-month rule, but it's just a guideline that the Council of Mortgage Lenders Handbook states. But it's some lenders like Nottingham Building Society, for example, would lend from 1 month of ownership and actually sort of refinance. This is the structure we use. So you could actually potentially get that result I just said there potentially within a month of ownership. But I always say if you wait 6 months, you'll get access to probably more lenders. There'll be more lenders available and better rates. So 6 months is probably realistic, I would say. It depends how aggressive you want to be. If you want to be really aggressive at growing your portfolio, you may choose to pay a little bit of a higher interest rate and pull your capital back out within 1 or 2 months of ownership. And then you're just leaving 7k in there. And on that deal, your net cash flowing after all your costs, your letting agency costs, your running costs, everything, your net cash flowing £226 net cash flow for as long as you hold that asset. So it's not a huge amount of cash flow, but
it's a pretty impressive return for such a short space of time.
Exactly.
One of the things which we were chatting about a little bit yesterday, and it strikes me as a slightly innovative way you've approached this as well. So you've got all the partners who are running in conjunction with you different property investments.
Yeah.
But there's also an internal market almost, if you like, within Portfolio Millionaire, where people can trade assets not quite against each other, but with each other if they want to move into a slightly bigger basket of properties.
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember the sort of specifics to it, but I think in essence, if you put a deal together and you're not in a position to take it, you can feed it into the network and one of the partners may buy it. One of our investors also may buy it. And that's just another good point. We've got access to in excess of 10,000 investors that have registered with us to receive property deals. But as a partner, you actually fast track those investors because that's one of the benefits to being on board as a partner. And obviously it helps us shift deals much quicker rather than having to take them out to the marketplace, in which case you've got many of these investors, all different types of people on this investor list. So you actually get access to those as well.
We just explained then that little bit. You're saying obviously the partners are real partners. They're in the business with you. They've put in the 10k initially, and then depending on how much individual capital they have to continue to invest. But then you say you have a separate investors list. So looking at all of these investments, and they may say, oh, I fancy a bit of that, or that suits me right now. So that's an additional potential investment option.
Yeah, so that's another way to generate an income without having to obviously actually buy that property. The property I mentioned there would typically cost an investor around about £3,000 or £4,000 fee to put together. So that's the job of doing that is to find it, secure it at the right price, usually with the vendor directly, direct to vendor, not going through estate agents, because we're in such a hot climate at the moment. Properties, when they go on with an estate agent, they sell within days. Now, it doesn't mean they're complete either, because people have got a misconception, and the whole tabloids are saying, oh, properties are selling so quick. The problem is mortgage lenders are also very strict at the moment. So they're pulling the plug at the last minute, at the last hurdle. And it means this is where we come in, professional property traders, where we can pick up a deal at a fair price to give a seller speed and certainty, because that's what we give them. We say, look, we're not going to mess around. We're going to buy it for this price. and we're going to complete typically with cash inside 30 days. Now, some people might be thinking, well, what happens if you don't have the full cash? We use a lot of bridging finance as well, because that enables you to leverage other people's private funds. We've got access to bridging companies that give you really good rates. They are typically quite expensive bridging, but when you buy properties like we buy them, and like that deal I've just showcased to you there, it's not expensive because you're able to get your cash back out and everything's relative, and you put them through our calculators, and it just makes sure that you're not making any costly mistakes, because it can be very costly if you get it wrong, property investments. And that, again, that's why a lot of people choose to work with us.
Well, I think that's a good and fair point to make, which is you need to know what you're doing in this business, because there's a lot of potential pitfalls, not only in terms of the property itself, but also the financing of it and the legal side of it. And as you say, bridging loans sometimes can be very expensive. But again, you have access to these groups which are sort of tailored towards the type of operation you're running yourselves. Yeah,
and typically bridging's very it's safe for us because of the way we buy property. We're typically buying property under market value. If you're buying property at full price and you buy with bridging and you haven't got your exit lined up, i.e. you refinance or things like that, we make sure all that's done in advance of the purchase just to protect yourself. And to know that you can pay that bridging loan off. But people get into deep water with bridging because they don't line up their exit. They just buy it. They'll go to auction, get bridging, because bridging is very flexible. They'll lend on properties that are not mortgageable. They'll lend on properties that have got Japanese knotweed, for example. And it doesn't mean to say you shouldn't take these properties. These are the types of properties we like to buy because problem properties present opportunities if you know how to fix them. And they can actually be very, very lucrative. Just a quick point, and I don't want to focus too much on this, but Japanese knotweed, for example, there's actually a government fund set up where they will pay you 150% back of any Japanese knotweed that you actually pay to get a certificate on. And let's say it costs you £10,000 to fix, they will pay you, £15,000 potentially back from this government fund.
Well, that's a little bit of inside knowledge, because you don't read about the financing available. You do read about the problem with Japanese knotweed being a nightmare and also very difficult to fully eliminate. But you're saying, no, hold on, you can make a bit of cash back with this.
Yeah. Well, we educate a lot of the investors on this because obviously it's in our interest to sell the property. But if they get a certificate on it, it then becomes mortgageable. It has to be treated every 10 years and you have to provide the certificates, but mortgage lenders will then lend on it. So you can get properties at really, really good prices, extreme knockdown prices. You're talking, in some cases, 40% off today's market value, or maybe 30 to 40% off today's market value. You fix that issue, then the value goes back up. Just another quick point. We mentioned flats before. There's this problem now as well, that another big problem with flats is they need what's known as an ESW1 certificate to become mortgageable because of Grenfell.
Huge issue here.
Yeah, anything over 18 metres in height has been condemned, lots of them across the UK, and it's causing huge problems. We're helping lots of sellers get out of these flats, but naturally, us as investors are trying to avoid them because they've got higher turnovers with tenants. But our other 10,000 registered investors love flats, and if you can get them at the right price and you can structure the right deal, they will pay you a fee to put the deal together. And this is what it's about, this business. It's just consultancy where we're sitting down with the seller and we're deciding how we can help them. And then naturally, we're running a business and we get paid from it as well. And we've just got to decide where those deals go to be able to make money.
But David, do the partners need to have a local network of builders, tradesmen who might be able to do jobs and do them fairly efficiently, well priced and quickly? Do they need to have that? If they're going to Middlesbrough, if they're going to Stockport over in the northwest, do they need to know somebody in the area who will go and make sure it's treated properly, any emergency repairs are done properly?
We've usually got builders. We've certainly got letting agents that cover most areas of the UK that I use on my own portfolio as well. So these are people I've used for over 10 years now, so on some of my properties. So I trust them, and I can trust them enough to pass the properties to them to fully manage them. They usually have their own builders as well. Right now, because of material costs going up as well, which is hard to ignore, it's getting quite hard to find certain builders at the right price. So it is good, and we've got people that we've given a lot of work to, and they usually give us sort of decent rates as well. So that's something we'll always try and extend to partners, because we want to make this as easy as possible. That's the whole point of coming on board with us. You buy a property and you want the hand holding through the process. You don't want to feel like you're on your own. If you get one part of this process wrong, it can be extremely costly. Let's suppose you buy a property and you might find one with a problem. You might buy it. You need to fix it to get off your bridge. If you can't fix it, or you haven't got the team around you, we've got solicitors that are very, very, very good at some of these bits of paperwork. I don't know how they do what they do, but we just take them to the specialist and they usually sort these issues out. What I mean by that, let me give you a bit of clarity. We had a flat recently that had an escalating ground rent every 10 years, and it doubles every 10 years. Mortgage lenders have recently changed some of their terms and conditions, which means they can't lend on those properties now, whereas they could a few years ago. If you don't know this, you buy that property, on a bridge, for example, or with cash, you're not going to be able to extract any capital out because you're not going to be able to get a mortgage on it. Whereas the solicitor in question, we took it to, said, we'll just do a deed of variation, costs £2,500. They do it, and then all of a sudden it becomes mortgageable again. So it's all solution focused, this business. And I know I went a bit narrow and deep there, but it's useful to kind of explain.
Well, it's another example of the fact that people want to get in, but they don't necessarily have the knowledge. And we've always said from the beginning of this conversation, there's a lot of things you need to consider when you're investing in property, and you do need special advice. And you're giving several examples of how you've sorted out problems which a normal punter wouldn't have been able to do by themselves, and could have ended up being quite exposed. Also,
just something else I really feel is important for everybody to understand as well. If you buy property the old-fashioned way, which is buying it in your personal name, there's something called Section 24. I assume most people don't know what it is. But the landlord's tax changes came in a few years ago. And what you used to be able to do, you used to be able to offset the interest proportion of the mortgage against any rental income. But what's happened, that's been scrapped now. So it means if you're a 40% taxpayer, you're in deep trouble. And if you've got a big portfolio, you're going to get hammered with tax. And there are some ways around it. And the first thing we show partners to do is to set up what's known as an SPV, a special purpose vehicle. And they're just a fancy name for a limited company. It can be set up from as little as £12 at the company's house. And by doing so, you automatically allowed now, it's a class as a business, and you're allowed to get around that Section 24. And you can now offset the mortgage interest against the rental income. And capital gains tax is charged differently and all this kind of stuff. So I won't get too bogged down with all that.
No, but that's all the kind of detail that you do go into when people sign up and do the training course. And just give you an eye, Keith, because I think one or two questions
I've answered them. They're just will it be recorded and stuff? So I've just,
right, okay, that's fair enough. Actually, we'll bring Keith back in a second. We'll bring Keith back in a second, because I don't know if you ever looked across the Irish Sea, David, because the property market in Ireland is, I wouldn't even say hot, it's sort of red hot, furnace hot, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you're concentrating on the UK market because the English market primarily, because there are different rules in Scotland, obviously, as well, for example, and indeed in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, Scotland and they all have different. I mean, I did mention at the start of this presentation, we do deals internationally. I've always been a big fan of traveling and property, and I've kind of put the two together. And depending what the market's doing, globally as well, you can help people, property sellers. So one of our partners, Jake, he has done quite a lot of UK property deals with us now, and he's found his feet. And this is what happens. We say, don't try and do everything. Just do one or two things, get some revenue in, and then decide what you want to do, because it can take you down so many different paths, this business. So what he did is he found a seller in Spain with a villa, and he put this together on what's known as a vendor finance deal. So he agreed a purchase price, because in Spain, again, it comes down to problems. You've got a massive oversupply of property again now, because people looking to sell because of Brexit and the day rule. People are now looking to sell. So there's lots and lots of properties available to get your hands on. So by asking sellers certain questions, i.e. do they need the money from the sale right now? Because most of them don't, and they're going to get hit with capital gains tax. The same with some of the deals in the UK. What you can do by doing these creative structures like vendor finance, you can actually pay the monthly installments for that property, which are 100% deductible to the purchase price, which means at the end of the payment term, and in this case, it was a 10-year term. So let's say, for argument's sake, I can't remember the exact figures, it was say €200,000 spread over 10 years. the owner's getting a monthly installment every month like clockwork, and it's almost like a pension payment and a bit of an income. They're not getting clobbered with CGT because do they really need 200k liquid in the bank account from that sale anyway, which they wouldn't get because of capital gains. It would get eaten away at. Whereas if they do a vendor finance method, they get what they want. And the person who's buying it, and Jake stood in the middle, by the way, he's not buying it. He sold it to somebody who wanted a holiday home in the sun that can use it. It's got a swimming pool. They don't need to put 40, 50% deposit down like some of the banks ask for right now. And there's no interest payable either. So there's massive benefits to them coming in. They just pay Jake's fee from putting the deal together, following our system. And that's 5k. He's charged a 5k fee on it to introduce them to solicitors, to introduce them and to basically structure the deal with our help. And the buyer comes in and they can use it for holidays for the family. And they've just paid 5k plus legal fees, and they're just paying monthly installments every month. At the end of 10 years, they own that property. So those types of structures, very unorthodox. And I know I'm kind of waffling on a bit here, but it's just kind of some of the stuff we're doing.
Well, you're giving examples of how people like your good self are looking at creative ways to find a solution to get into the market. So in terms of your overall business and the ambitions for Portfolio Millionaire itself, what's the sort of plan over the next 5 years? I mean, is this a real period of growth you're hoping for now?
That's a really good question, because when we're looking to scale the business, we're trying to look at different ways to do it. And we thought, we've got all these investors with lots of cash, but we've got a real big problem. We don't have enough deals for them. So we thought, well, why don't we train people up on how to bring them in? And we do, just for transparency, we do charge what we call a service fee. So if you bring a deal to us like Jake or somebody else might bring us a deal, they found it, they secured it on really good price, and they say, right, sell it and progress it to completion. We've got a full in-house service that will do that. So the team will sell it, they'll progress it to completion, and then the partner gets paid less our service fee on completion. So they get 70% of the fee. So if it's a 5k fee that's generated, then they get the 70% of that, and then we retain 30% for our service. Because for us, we've got a team, we can work off lower margins because we're doing deals, month in, month out, and our team are already sort of paid a set kind of salary and part commission structure as well. So it works really well. And this is why we decided to scale the business in this way, because partners get to make money working with us, no matter what level they're at, how much cash they do or they don't have. However, we do encourage them to build their portfolio as quickly as possible, because like that deal I mentioned before in Middlesbrough, just outside Middlesbrough, deals like that will pay you for as long as you own them. If you hold them for the rest of your life, you're going to get paid for the rest of your life on it. You're going to get most of your capital back out. And that's what we try and encourage people to do.
And if someone comes along off the back of this, say, and they want to talk to you and they're interested in becoming a partner, explore more options with you, how long does it take? I know you say you run this sort of 8-week training program, but if somebody rings you in the next week or so, can they actually begin to see their capital invested in a project within a few months?
Yeah, good question. It depends is the answer on what you're looking to do. But what we do kind of say to people is, if you do what we tell you to do within the 8 weeks, and it's just 10 hours a week minimum of time investment, within 8 weeks, you will be working on deals. And that doesn't mean cash is going to land in your bank in particularly week 8. It's difficult to pinpoint it because they're going with solicitors, and then it can take a bit of time to complete. But the returns are typically very quick compared to perhaps other franchises, because you're following our system and you're able to get into this deal flow quickly. We want you working on deals because we need to move quickly, because we've got investors that we need to get deals to. Otherwise, they're just going to go to other people out there and buy deals. We want to get part of that market share as well. So it's really important you get your return on investment relatively quick. We do say to people, though, be patient. It's not going to happen in 2-3 weeks. You've just got to go through the cycle, the training, and do it properly, because we do start off discussing the tax saving mechanisms, the companies, setting up an SPV, setting up a trading company, making sure they're completely ring fenced and separate assets. And you've got to do it all step by step, because if you get it wrong, there's nothing worse than having a really good property deal and realizing you've not got your company set up and you can't buy it and trying to set up your company, it'll just take too long and you're going to miss out on that deal. So we just do it step by step in that fashion.
Well, I think that's very important to be upfront with people, because obviously you're saying, look, this is a good method and we can and do make very good returns, but you also have to be realistic. We have to have everything in place. And as you said there, don't expect after week 8, week 9 that suddenly money is going to be flowing in. You've got to be, you've got to be sensible about how this is going to work out for you.
And if you've got capital as well, you can get it to work straight away, because we can link you in with our sales team, who will then be able to gift you these deals sort of wrapped up, like I've just shown you, in a brochure, and they'll say what the returns are. We're completely transparent. We put everything through calculators. It tells you what stamp duty is payable, what legal fees are, what sourcing fees there are, what purchase price there is. And then it tells you at the bottom what money is required in and how much you get back out, and what your return on investment is, because that deal I mentioned before is about 20% return on investment. People aren't getting these kind of returns, certainly with the money sat in the bank. Get it to work, get it out there and get it into property, because it's extremely, it's tangible. That's what I like about property. You can touch it, where it's not like, I'm not saying anything negative against cryptocurrency or anything like that, but you could click a button and pretty much your money will vanish. In some cases it could, and it's very volatile, whereas property, it's extremely safe. I feel if you do it in the right way and you follow the right steps, it's it can be quite lucrative.
And what about from your own perspective? Because obviously you're well versed in the whole property industry, but is it something that you always felt, I can make a good living out of it myself, but I can also build a business out of this?
Well, it's funny you mention this. It takes you down different paths, and you've got to, and it's what you're more drawn to, because there's certain paths you can go down in property that I've tried and I thought, that's not quite for me. But building my portfolio and building different property businesses allows you to spread your risk. It allows you to get multiple streams of income. And that's what I love about property. You can get money from, the deal packaging, we call it, where you find a deal, you don't have to buy it, you can structure it and you can sell it on and make a fee. You could buy a property at the right price, add some value to it. Some of the partners are looking to reconfigure properties, change a 1-bed property to a 2-bed, and automatically increasing the value. And you can do that under permitted development and all this kind of stuff. And you can make maybe £20,000-30,000 just from that one deal. And if you do, 2 or 3 of those a year, it's not a bad income alongside the other deals you're doing. So these are all the multiple ways to make money. But the one that I like the most is building your portfolio, because if you have to stop work tomorrow, it's important to know that you've still got money coming in. You could be lying in bed with, flu or COVID or something like that. Yeah. Fortunately, you've not got any income coming in because you're not going to work. Whereas if you've got a property portfolio and letting agents are looking after it, then you've still got money pouring in every single month from different avenues. So it's really important to do that, I feel.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. Actually, it just came into my head now. This isn't directly related to you, but remember when you were saying you've always looked at different aspects of the property market. Do you remember going back into the 90s, Robbie Fowler at Liverpool? And yes. He got into the property market, and then I think Michael Owen did, and Gary Neville now. But the Liverpool fans used to chant, we all live in a Robbie Fowler house, because he used to buy up whole terraces in Liverpool. So he was an early adopter, obviously.
Yeah, some of these footballers, and some of them you find out through them, like through family offices. And, we met, I had a meeting in London yesterday, and we met this Jewish family, and they've got £20 million to invest this month. And some of the partners that we're involved with actually go out and find property portfolios, because that's what they want. It's no good taking 1 or 2 properties to these investors. These people, these family offices, have got significant amounts of capital to invest. And they bought a portfolio office last year of 20 properties in Sunderland. They didn't bat an eyelid. They just bought it, and I think it was just over £1 million. And dealing with people like that, they're at a different level, because it's all off numbers. They're so fast. There's no messing around. It's just they'll buy it, and then we get a commission which is attached to that, and we like doing more of those. Hence why I went and met them yesterday, because they're much more lucrative. And that's kind of where I see the business heading, working with some of these bigger people. And also the partners can gain access to these, because if you're sourcing portfolios and you bring a portfolio, and we can hand it to the family office and they'll make an offer on it, and then we'll all get paid a very good fee. But these relationships have taken me over a decade to build. I didn't just go into central London yesterday, knocking on a load of doors. These people I've been sort of building these relationships with, and it's really strange where they come from. You get introduced to people, and some of these business ventures go nowhere, or connections, and it only takes 1 or 2 and you get your feet in the door, and then all of a sudden it's like, right, you're in with them, they trust you, they like you, and then as long as you've got to keep a clean nose in this business, because people come and go all the time in property. But if you keep a clean nose and you're keeping with the right people, your business is going to continue to grow. Slow and steady, that's the way I've seen it anyway.
Well, it's also important, as you say, if you're dealing with some of those big end clients. We started the conversation by saying that one of your selling points is that people can get in without a huge amount of capital, 10,000 to start in, and then they get access to other opportunities, perhaps some of them from those type of areas you were describing with the bigger projects.
I think that might have been what I touched on yesterday, Joey, actually, but there's some avenues where people can get involved with some deals that we don't put out to the marketplace, and they can get involved with myself personally, and we invest perhaps 50-50 in a deal. We don't get too many people in the deal, because then it becomes a bit of a nightmare when there's too many people, and also you've got the regulation, FCA regulations and stuff, so you've got to be really careful with that. But usually there's these types of opportunities that you wouldn't normally get access to. Because people are committing to being a partner with us, and they do have to invest with us. If they do that and they're showing that commitment, we can then work with them on our deals, because that's the way we kind of see it anyway.
Well, you sound pretty optimistic about the next few years, and the business itself is growing. So it's a good time for people to follow up from this conversation. Keith, is there anything else you want to highlight from your end, or
I actually was just
yourself
thinking when you were saying about, like, it's great to have, if you retire tomorrow, but there's a thing I heard that you'll never be truly wealthy unless you have passive income, and that's what houses is.
There's quite a few quotes out there I quite like. I like the one by Warren Buffett, where if you don't find a way to make money in your sleep, you're going to work until you die. I quite like that one, because it's true as well. I mean, but another thing though, to quickly, I know we've got to go in a second, but people get really hung up on this passive income dream. But just think about it, and I fell into this trap. I thought, once I built my portfolio up and I realized I didn't have to work anymore if I didn't want to, so what the hell am I going to do with my time? I actually love property. You can probably tell I'm quite passionate, and there's so many different things you can do in it. And I absolutely love it. And I can't see myself giving up anytime soon. But if I did, I could just live off the income. But I really enjoy what I do. It's brilliant. And you can do that if you've got a passion. So passive income shouldn't really be at the forefront of your mind. However, you are going to build something and a legacy you can perhaps pass to your children. And certainly if they're held in a company, it's a lot easier to do that than personally, because you can allocate perhaps shares of the company and all this kind of creative stuff. So it's much easier to hand your legacy to your children and your family by doing things like that as well.
And you mentioned, because it's also on your website, David, the Warren Buffett quote about earning income while you sleep. Well, he's in his mid-90s, so he has lots of time to sleep, but also he's been making a lot of money for decades, so he's got something right as well.
Something tells me he doesn't sleep much either. So he's working most of the time.
He's probably one of those guys, you're right, actually, they're all up at 5 o'clock in the morning looking at the market and working out the next opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So listen, I've enjoyed the conversation, and wish you, David, good luck with it in future. Keith, do you want to sort of wrap it up in terms from your end and what's available next?
Thanks a million for coming on today, David. I'll just put up a button there on the screen if anyone wants to get in contact with yourself. We're also going to send this recording out to everyone who registered, and we'll also be putting it up on your profile on Franchise Direct.
Yeah, just a quick point before you go. I hope I'm allowed to do this, but I have got a book on Amazon, and it kind of details a lot of the strategies I talk about, because one thing we like to give is transparency before someone's thinking of investing with us. You want to know exactly what you're buying into, and it covers a lot of the strategies we operate just for transparency. So, people can head over to Amazon and grab a copy of that.
Yeah, no, that's also good to know that people can read it and then have the conversation with you and pick up and points out of the book, as well as some of the areas we've covered in today's chat.
Exactly. Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks for your time, guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks very much,
Thanks
David.
very much.
Thanks, Jerry.
Bye, David.
Bye now.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.